In this video, we will talk about how to use reference angles to evaluate trigonometric functions. So let's work through some examples. Let's say we would like to find the sine of 240 degrees. So if we think about our unit circle, here's 0, here's 90 degrees, 180, and 270. The sine of 240 degrees, if we draw that angle starting at 0, we'll go all the way around here, and we'll stop somewhere out here. So the sine, so 240 degrees lands right here. So to find the sine of 240 degrees, it helps if we can find our reference angle. And remember, our reference angle is just the distance between wherever our angle lands and the x-axis. So really, our reference angle is this angle right here. So the reference angle would just be the difference between 240 degrees and 180 degrees. So 240 minus 180. Our reference angle is 60 degrees. So really, finding the sine of 240 degrees is the same as finding the sine of 60 degrees. And if you've memorized your XY coordinate pairs for the unit circle for 30 degrees, 45, and 60 degrees, which I've written over here, the sine corresponds to the y coordinate, which is square root of 3 over 2 for sine of 60. And to determine if the square root of 3 over 2 is positive or negative, we can recall this acronym ASTC, or All Students Take Calculus, which shows which trig functions are positive in which quadrant. So here at 240 degrees, we're in the third quadrant over here. So only the tangent is positive in this particular quadrant. So that means the sine is going to actually be negative in that quadrant. So our final answer will be the negative square root of 3 over 2. That is what the sine of 240 degrees is. All right, let's try another one. Let's say we want to find the cosine of 330 degrees. So if we draw our unit circle again, here we've got 0, 90, 180, 270, and if we go all the way around the circle, that's 360. So if we were to draw the angle 330 degrees, starting at 0, we go around the circle, and we land somewhere over here. This is 330 degrees. So the reference angle for 330 degrees is the distance between where this angle lands and the x-axis. So right here, this is our reference angle. So that would just be 360 minus 330. And that is 30 degrees. So let's work with 30 degrees instead of 330 degrees. So really what we want to find is the cosine of 30 degrees. And you'll recall the xy coordinates for 30 degrees are square root of 3 over 2 and 1/2. So the cosine corresponds to the x coordinate. So that's square root of 3 over 2. And then we can refer to the second diagram over here to determine which trig functions are positive in which quadrant. So we're in quadrant 4 over here, which tells us C, the cosine, is positive in this particular quadrant. So this will be our final answer, square root of 3 over 2, and it remains positive because the cosine is positive in that quadrant. So the cosine of 330 degrees is the square root of 3 over 2. All right, let's try another one. Let's say we want to find the tangent of 495 degrees. So let's draw our unit circle again. Now, if we start at 0 and we go all the way around the unit circle, that would be 360 degrees, one full revolution. So to go 495 degrees, we would need to go 360 degrees plus another 135. So if we draw that, we're going all the way around, and then we go an extra 135. So if we imagine this is 90, this is 180, an extra 135 would take us all the way out here. So this angle would land somewhere right here, 495 degrees. Now, to find the reference angle, we just need to find the distance between this angle and the x-axis. So recall we said this angle was 135. So how can we go from 135 to 180 degrees, the x-axis? Well, we can just do 180 minus 135. And that is 45 degrees. So what we can really do is just find the tangent of 45 degrees. Now, if you'll recall, the tangent is sine over cosine. So, if we look at 45 degrees on our unit circle, the xy coordinates that correspond to 45 degrees are the square root of 2 over 2 and the square root of 2 over 2. So remember, the cosine is the x and the sine is the y. So what we get is square root of 2 over 2 divided by the square root of 2 over 2. So because the numerator and the denominator are the exact same number, this whole fraction just turns out to be 1. So the tangent of 45 degrees is 1. To determine if this number is negative or positive, we can refer to this diagram over here. All students take calculus. This tells us which trig functions are positive in which quadrant. So we can see we're in the second quadrant here. So only s, or only sine, is positive in this particular quadrant. So that means the tangent is actually going to be negative in this quadrant. So our final result will be negative 1. So the tangent of 495 degrees is just negative 1. All right, let's try one more. Let's say we want to find the secant of negative 120 degrees. So the secant of an angle is equal to 1 over the cosine. So what we're going to do here is actually just find the cosine of negative 120 degrees and then take the reciprocal of that answer. So let's do that. So let's draw our unit circle. Here's 0. Now remember, if we're having a positive angle, we draw it by going counterclockwise around the circle. But if we have a negative angle, we go clockwise. So negative 120 degrees, we can imagine this is negative 90. This is negative 180. So to draw negative 120 would be something like this. It would land somewhere out here. Negative 120 degrees. So what we want to do is find the reference angle. So that's the distance between this negative 120 and the x-axis, which is the difference between negative 180 and negative 120. Well, that difference is just 60 degrees. So what we can do is just find the cosine of 60 degrees. Well, referring to this unit circle diagram over here, for 60 degrees we have the xy coordinates 1/2 and square root of 3 over 2. So remember, the cosine corresponds to the x coordinate, so that would be 1/2. So cosine of 60 degrees is 1/2. Now to determine if this value is positive or negative, we can refer to this diagram over here, the all students take calculus, which tells us which trig functions are positive in which quadrant. And we can see we're in quadrant 3 over here. Only the tangent is positive in this quadrant. So cosine must be negative. So the cosine of 60 degrees is negative 1/2. Remember, we want to try to find the secant. So the secant is just going to be 1 over negative 1/2, which is just the reciprocal. So we're actually just going to get negative 2. And that's our final answer. The secant of negative 120 degrees will be negative 2.